Hi, it's Polly with Get Busy Thriving. I'm excited to share with you this video that I recorded of an interview that I completed with Gila, a certified hypnotherapist, one who I've personally partnered with and have experienced her work with myself firsthand. She's phenomenal. She's going to teach you a lot about hypnotherapy, hypnosis, and how it can help addiction. So stay tuned. So what is hypnosis?
Hypnosis is really an altered state of consciousness. You're never unconscious. If you think of your brain waves in the busy active state where you're multitasking or you're focusing on something very intently, that is what we call beta brain waves. And they're moving very fast if you were to look at them. They're close together if you were viewing them on a sine wave. Hypnosis is an altered state in that you're deepened into the relaxed, focused alpha brainwave state, where your brain waves are moving at a slower continuum. You're very relaxed and focused, and it's a very receptive state for positive suggestion. And as you deepen into the hypnotic trance state, you can go even deeper than alpha and enter into what we call theta. So that in the deep theta state, or what we call deep trance, it's like the outside world completely falls away. And you don't even notice sounds. You can get what's described as time distortion, where we've been in session for an hour and someone comes out and I say, oh, that hour went fast. What, that was an hour? That seems like 15, 20 minutes. Yeah. So all hypnosis is an altered state of consciousness. You're never unconscious. And that's one of the primary myths about hypnosis, is that we can put someone in a state where they don't know what's happening. And that's just simply not true.
So what's the difference between hypnosis and hypnotherapy then?
That's a really good question to ask, because hypnosis is a state that we all naturally move throughout the day. Okay. Once we become hungry, if our blood sugar's low, there's less glucose to the brain, so our brainwaves naturally slow because there's less energy for cognitive function. When we drive a car and we kind of fall into that state of what we call environmental hypnosis, or reading a book, watching a movie. So hypnosis is a very naturally occurring state. Hypnotherapy is taking a naturally occurring state and deepening it. And then once you're in the therapeutic aspect of it, through a trained facilitator, you can start to effect change based on the positive suggestions that you provide to your subject. The subject has to be willing to accept the positive suggestions. They have to be willing to make the changes, but it's the facilitator that crafts the suggestions in a way that the client is likely to accept them.
Okay. So how is hypnosis useful with archetypes?
Hypnosis can be very helpful with archetypes, with what we know as the personality traits from different archetypes. Some people refer to them also as different masks that we wear. But we look at the motivations behind these different archetypes and how can they support us in a goal. So for example, if someone is looking to gain more confidence in a social situation, we can kind of challenge this archetype from someone that they really identify with and imbue those qualities as they enter into that social situation, and then use those resources to create the outcome they desire.
And how can they help with addiction? So if someone feels like they have this archetype that sort of takes over them, like it sort of runs them, and they fall into this personality that they don't even feel like themselves, and it causes them to do things in their addictive behavior that they don't even really want to do or feel like they want to do, how can hypnosis help dull that archetype, or work with it, get out in front of it? How can you help with that?
The simple answer to that is that there are emotions that are driving the archetype. There are emotions that are driving addiction. And in hypnosis, we don't treat, diagnose, or cure any particular presentation of symptoms, but we can support the treatment of. So if we're dealing specifically with addiction and archetypes, we can say, okay, let's gain clarity on why this particular personality is needing to express itself. Are they trying to be heard? Are they trying to dull the pain? Are they trying to escape from something that's painful in their reality? And through hypnotherapy, once you gain the clarity of the motivation behind the behavior, then it's the therapeutic process that helps to change that behavior.
Excellent.
In support with treatment.
Can you explain how hypnotherapy can give you leverage or that power that you can't get from traditional therapy, but hypnotherapy can maybe go deeper?
Absolutely, and that's a common theme that I hear. I've talked about this for 10 years and I've gotten to a certain level, but I can't seem to get to the next step. And the simple answer to that is that we know that our conscious mind accounts for about anywhere between 8 and 10% of our motivations and behaviors and the way that we present ourselves. With hypnosis, we can go in and we can begin to repattern or change the mental or emotional impression that those experiences may have had on us, and therefore begin to move through the issue and find ourselves on the other side from the hypnotic perspective. And there's a really funny saying that, willpower is great until you need it. Willpower is, I've got plenty of it until that moment when I really need it. Yeah. And that's because if you think of the leverage of your emotions, what they play over your conscious thinking mind, right. In that critical situation, emotions are almost always going to win. But we're working with emotions here, not with logic. Mm-hmm. And that's how we can apply that particular concept.
Yeah, and the coaching that I do, I often tell people, find small wins.
Yes.
Find those small wins, those little things that you can do each day that rebuild that trust in yourself, that rebuild that confidence in yourself so that it can carry over into whatever it is that you're facing. So that when you're faced with whatever that urge is or something that feels like you don't have the power over it, you remember, wait, just 5 minutes ago I was so powerful over here, or today I've had experiences of that, and you can call upon that. So
absolutely. And the reason why that is effective is because the subconscious mind's primary goal is to keep the ego and the physical body safe. So we always look to the past to say, what happened yesterday so I know what to expect for today and tomorrow.
Right.
So when you're teaching people to focus on the small wins, you're giving them a touchstone to go back to in their immediate past to find a point of reference of success. Right. So that they can begin to expect that success again today and tomorrow.
So what is the root of these stubborn habits or addictions that we have, and how does hypnotherapy help with that?
Well, I see addictions and habits as two separate categories. Okay. We can have a habit that will accelerate into an addiction if it's not caught and not mediated and not replaced with something more healthy. Mm-hmm. So if we look at what a habit does for us, it self-soothes. It creates a sense of calm or release, either consciously or subconsciously, emotionally and physically. So if someone were to come to me and say, I find myself emotionally eating to relieve my stress, my questions will be, what types of things do you eat? Some people like creamy textures, some people like crunchy. Then I'll ask them, what is that giving to you? What are you getting from it? Once they describe that to me, we find a healthier replacement for that. Now, if the habit goes on long enough, the brain begins to wire itself more in the direction of that behavior and solidifies that behavior. Right. If the substance that's being used, whether it's food or alcohol or a chemical, brings enough of a pleasure response to the brain, we can create an addiction. Mm-hmm. And that is, again, a whole separate category that requires professional treatment from licensed professionals. Where hypnotherapy supports that is in increasing your confidence and trust in the treatment that you're receiving. Mm-hmm. We also help to look at the reasons why you created the habit in the first place that may have accelerated into addiction. And through that, we can, again, pattern interrupt, we can reframe, we can clear some of the illusions or distortions around that original behavior that may have created the habit in the first place that may have accelerated to addiction.
Great. So when is hypnotherapy most effective with addiction?
I would say at any point within treatment. People will come to me before they've sought professional treatment for addiction, and of course we get a medical referral to work with them. But aside from that, we can give them the confidence going into treatment that they're going to be successful. Because again, if they're looking at the past to see what to expect for today and tomorrow, and perhaps they've tried to quit in the past and been unsuccessful, there's a very powerful emotional expectation that they're going to fail again. A very common theme we'll hear is people say, I've tried everything and nothing has worked. So through hypnosis, at any stage in the treatment for addiction, we help to vent and release the expectation of failure. We vent doubt, we vent fear, we vent shame, we vent blame. And most of all, we vent guilt. The guilt of, I haven't been able to complete this before, and all the people I've let down are myself. Because once you create the solid foundation through hypnosis to trust that you can reach your goal, then any form of treatment you're in is more likely to be successful. Whether it's chemotherapy, whether it's addiction treatment. One of the more popular things that we're seeing floating around in the industry is the term psychoneuroimmunology. And that is the effect of your emotions on your immune system and how that plays out in creating illness on some level. And they're starting to find a connection between our emotions and our immune system. So it stands to reason that if we can tackle these emotions, even outside of the immune system response, we can work on all levels of the brain and all levels of physiology, and that's how it can also tie into addiction.
Wow. So there's a lot of information on the web. YouTube has hypnosis and videos that you can download, digital downloads here and there. What are your thoughts on people doing that, or even doing it virtually with you? Can it work through Skype, let's say?
Absolutely, and I am really grateful for all of the information that's out there on the internet, because it's driving the interest in this particular profession. It's really important to note that everyone has a different type of suggestibility. And if we look at the dominant types, the first dominant type would be physical, or what we call body-centric suggestibility. The other type of the scale would be emotional or head-centric suggestibility. So when we are looking and perusing the internet, it's been my experience that most of these digital downloads or pre-recorded videos are geared very much towards the body-centric, the more direct and literal suggestible. So a direct example of that is, you're not going to eat junk food anymore. You don't want to eat junk food anymore. Now, that's going to play great to somebody who interprets their world direct and literal, as a physical body-centric person would. It wouldn't play as well to someone who's more emotional or head-centric. For them, we want to look for suggestions that are more vague and inferential, where they get to interpret what it means. So for what I would suggest to people is, if you're looking on the internet for different tools, keep searching to the one that plays to your suggestibility type. Because people will say to me, you know, I've tried hypnosis before and it didn't work. And when I ask them, did your hypnotherapist assess your suggestibility? Every single time the response is no. And it's important to understand the suggestibility type, because then you know what types of products are going to work for you.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I specialize, the method that I was trained in, is to assess the client's suggestibility, how they perform in hypnosis, what their preferred communication style is, so that we know how to frame those suggestions so that they'll be more likely to take them in.
Excellent.
But I absolutely believe that sessions can work via Skype. My longest client, I should say my most furthest distance client, has been in New Zealand. So, you know, in person or via distance, it's really a matter of preference for the client.
What are your thoughts on the suggestibility of people with eating disorders?
So when we're talking about suggestibility in people with eating disorders or addiction, we have to look at how we move into these natural states of hypnosis or suggestibility. And the predominant state that gets us there is stress or anxiety. So if a person is using food or using a chemical substance as a means to cope, they're already stressed. They've already become hyper-suggestible. Some people are more suggestible to external influence. So for someone with an eating disorder, they may be more suggestible to what the culture says about the way their body should look. They may be more suggestible to a magazine or to an external person in their life. Some people are more suggestible to their internal thoughts about the way that they should look and present themselves to the world. So suggestibility does play such an important role in how food addiction, how body image, and how eating disorders play a role in our lives, and where we're taking the cues from. Are we more suggestible to our own negative dialogue, or that from the external world? Or perhaps it's a combination of the two. And when I assess someone's suggestibility, we're able to see if you are far more body-centric and suggestible to the external, or more emotional suggestible and more suggestible to your own internal dialogue. Some people meet right around the middle, and we refer to them as somnambulists, where they're equally suggestible to internal or external forces. And so we work with the client's unique suggestibility to frame the suggestions in a way that are more likely to bring them success.